Well, this one is going to be a rough one, so strap in there, fam. We got talk about Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire. Now, this is a game that I really wasn't aware of until a couple months ago, although when I did find out about it, I was pretty hyped for it, because this game honestly looks like a game called Skies of Arcadia, which is one of my favorite JRPGs of all time, and is almost impossible to play anywhere. And not only that, the game actually does say that it is an homage to the JRPGs from like that PlayStation 1 Dreamcast era. Visually speaking, everything looked really good. It did have turn-based combat, which I know is divisive for some, but for those of us that love those old school JRPGs, they have to be turn-based at this point. I can get used to the newer style of the action RPG, but honestly, when it markets itself as like a retro JRPG, I need it to be turn-based, and that's what it was. So it had a lot going for it, and the game itself promised to be a lot. And if I'm honest, there is quite a bit to like here. There's just also quite a bit to dislike. So let's sit down and talk about Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire. But before we get into that, please hit that like and subscribe button. Helps the channel and makes me happy. Plus puts you on that infamous Christmas card list that I know you all want to be on. Anyway, so Sky Ocean starts off like many of those other RPGs, JRPGs, where you play a young man, probably late teens, who's on the cusp of adulthood and responsibilities. And this one in particular is about to become a pilot, but more than just a pilot that can fly around, but no, an actual protector of his island, which by the way happens to be in the sky. So in this world, getting your pilot's license or becoming a pilot, I imagine would be just like getting a driver's license. So yeah, it's more than just that. He has been trained in aerial combat, and it just so happens he's also going to be the leader of his squad. And his squad is filled with his childhood friends, people that he's grown up with and that have also been training with him. So this is a big day, as all of them are preparing for their final exam, wanting to move on and become protectors of the island in their awesome air jets. And once we're given that little backstory, we're able to control Glenn Windwalker, who, by the way, is his name. I didn't say it before. I should have. I don't know how I missed that, but yeah, it's Glenn Windwalker. And it's right here that I really fell into the biggest issue I had with the game, or at least one of the biggest issues, and that is the camera. The camera is so sensitive that just barely moving it causes it to spin around quickly. It almost made me nauseous. I'm not even lying. I had to go in and change the sensitivity all the way down just to be able to really play it. And while turning down the sensitivity did help, it was still just incredibly loose feeling. And it didn't feel like you had a lot of control over your character. Like, it just needed to be tightened up. And if I'm honest, the actual camera angles sucked as well, but I figured I could get past this. Like, maybe I would get used to it, or maybe it was just something that only affected that aspect of the game. Like when you're in your jet, it controls different, or maybe even inside. I don't know. I was just thinking this is probably just a small thing, and at worst I can get used to it. At best, it's not going to stick around. So off I went to start my tutorial mission, still with high hopes, and was really excited to check out the rest of the game. And so starting back with the final exam, which again is just another tutorial. But as I went through, I was able to control the plane, and this is also when I realized I wish I was controlling just the character again, because it controlled so much better than controlling the plane. I didn't think the controls could get worse, but they did. And not only that, your plane just bounces around off stuff, like incredibly violently, to the point where you do feel just like a pinball half the time. Like, for example, if you have the misfortune of having to do a mission inside of a closed area in your ship, you will almost be using like geometry to get around, because you're going to hit off things, and so you're trying to plan out exactly where you're going to end up. It's so bad. And just when everything seemed to be at its darkest, a ray of sunshine came down, and it was in the form of the turn-based combat, which actually was quite appealing to me, because you are in your own jet fighting against other jets or other things in the sky, so you're using guns, and there is actually a percentage that you're going to hit an enemy. It's not just 100% you're always going to hit. And I actually like this approach because it does offer a little bit of strategy. As in, if you just do a regular attack, there's a good chance at least one of your bullets is going to miss. But you're shooting like 3 or 4, so there's a chance that you can still do good damage. But if you use your skills, you have a higher percentage of hitting it, but if you miss, it's only one shot. And usually that one shot will do massive damage, but there again, if you got an enemy towards the lower part of its health, it's almost better just to go ahead and take him out with a normal attack. But there's a little bit of strategy mixed in, and I just liked it. To me, it felt very reminiscent of a game called Ring of Red, which I also really loved, which is another great JRPG. And so I figured, you know what, I've gotten through much worse for other games, so maybe I'll just deal with the controls and just enjoy the turn-based combat. Because also, I have to be honest, the story wasn't half bad. It was pretty good. It was a little bit cookie cutter, but essentially, your father has disappeared, and your mother sort of just wrapped herself up in work. They both used to be sky explorers, as they would go out and salvage things and bring it back to the island, at the same time creating trade routes and really helping this village thrive. Although ever since your father's mysterious disappearance, your mother just hasn't been the same. You also find out that you are part of this legacy. The Windwalkers were incredibly important in building out just the sky exploration in general, creating, like I said, these trade routes, and really helping establish a civilization in the clouds. And it is believed that you are more than just an ace. In fact, something that really made me laugh, though, was one of the lines in the game was like, it's like Glenn is part of the ship. The way he controls it is magnificently beautiful. Something of that nature, I'm paraphrasing. But meanwhile, I'm just like crashing around like I'm a completely wasted pilot who thinks I'm in a destruction derby or something. But anyway, the island that we live on actually gets attacked because there's an enemy who wants the Windwalker family. We don't know why, but it's their whole goal. And essentially, at this point, they take over the island, looking for the Windwalkers, of course. As there's bombs bursting everywhere and everyone's panicking, you and your friends manage to escape with the help of your professor and your mother. Now, this is really when the game kicks off, and it starts to become more open, and you get to meet more people, do more missions, you have a little bit more control of what your party's actions are, and it's less linear, and to be more in that traditional sense of a JRPG. And this is when I expected the game to maybe level up a little bit, give me a little bit more besides that combat. Then while the story did get a little bit better, while the character interactions got better, everything else just seemed to go down. In fact, the combat itself started to get very monotonous and boring. It was almost the same things over and over. I was expecting it to start at one point and then grow, but in turn it really didn't. It just became the same thing over and over. It was like they had an idea for what they wanted to do, but they never fulfilled it. I think of a game like Valkyria Chronicles where it starts off similar to this, but they grow upon it, and there's new skills that are introduced and just different mechanics that go into the turn-based combat. But no, it just stays, well, stagnant, honestly. Not only that, and I don't like to discuss this because we're playing on the Nintendo Switch here, but the graphics are not great. They're okay, but specifically there's a few characters that are like nightmare fuel, and one of them happens to be one of our squad mates named Ren. When you look at his face every now and then, it's just terrifying. I can't explain it, and I hope I can find a good image to put in this video. Not only that, of course there's going to be performance issues because, well, of course there is. There is a ton of these problems with the game, and they just kind of keep coming up, and this becomes more and more filled of, hey, this game has a decent story, it had an okay combat, and everything else is just not good. In fact, it's very underbaked. This is a game that I really hope does get some love and attention and some patches, and maybe they even re-release it in like a year or so, because it does need that much work. But right now, man, this game is like a 4 out of 10, maybe even like a 3 out of 10 if I'm being honest, and I feel like I'm being too harsh, but I promise you, for the $24.99 price tag, it's not worth it, not right now. I do think that there is something here though, and I did enjoy some parts of the game, but just having to compromise so many things, not only the controls, not only the performance, but the fact that it doesn't really grow very much. These are all issues that I think could be remedied if they cared, and it does feel like they do. It almost feels like the game was just rushed, and hopefully that changes, but honestly, my opinion would be just to avoid this one for right now. Maybe see and kind of have your eye on it to see if there's some sort of patches or a re-release or something like that. It hurt, honestly, because I was really rooting for this game. I was hoping this game would be the return of like the Skies of Arcadia, but unfortunately it's not. Anyway, that's just my thoughts on Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire. Let me know what you thought. Are you interested in this game? Is this a game that you were planning on? Or let me know if you've actually played it. Anything and everything in that comment section is much appreciated. I love each and every one of you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.